Republican Congressman Peter King of New York, along with Republican Congresswoman Mimi Walters of California. Peter, I want to go back to our days where I remember one time one of Newt Gingrich's best friends, when we were having those very tough, rancorous meetings about whether Gingrich stayed or went. It was actually one of his good friends from California that said, Newt, I love you, and you can tell us where we're going to be 50 years from now. You just have no idea where we're going to be tomorrow. And it was, you and I saw it, frustration for Newt, who is a remarkable tactician, but about 2 or 3 years in, we all sort of lost our way. How important is it, and do you agree with me, that a strong leader actually can make a difference and run your caucus?
No, we do need a strong leader, Joe, but I wouldn't give this Freedom Caucus as much credit as you're giving. I have not giving them. I don't see any sense of responsibility from them. Remember, they're the ones who 2 years ago insisted on shutting the government down over Obamacare, saying we had to defund Obamacare, one of the most unpopular things we ever did. They wanted to shut down the Department of Homeland Security at a time when ISIS was burning people alive. And now they wanted to shut down the government over Planned Parenthood. And I'm 100% pro-life, and I voted 100% pro-life. But every national right to life organization said, don't do it. There's an anarchist streak there, and they feel that maybe the 15% of the conference, that they should have some kind of veto power. Listen, everyone should be listened to, everyone should be heard, but we're not a high school debating society. I think you need a speaker who can show leadership, but also, quite frankly, a speaker that can bang heads and break legs if he has to get the job done. The conservatives in this country talk about Margaret Thatcher and about her leadership. When she took over the Conservative Party in Britain, she was brutal in purging her enemies. We have to get a job done, and we have to realize that you have a leader and you get behind him. Now, John Boehner maybe was not the perfect leader, but I don't see anyone these guys are putting forward that I could support. I think Paul Ryan would be a great speaker. I would support Paul Ryan 110%.
Yeah, of course. Now, Peter, though, did during that time also accuse me of being barefooted and walking out of tent revival, so I didn't know what I was doing. We had one of these debates.
He may have had a point.
He may have had a point. He goes, I wouldn't listen to Scarborough. You know, he just walked out of a tent revival barefooted. It's a nice Washington Post quote, Peter. But not that I remember 20 years later.
I understand that, John.
You did say that. It was
verbatim.
Actually hilarious. Mimi Walters, what's next for the Republican Party? Where do we go from here?
Well, we're going to have a meeting this morning at 9 o'clock, a conference meeting, and we're going to discuss what just happened yesterday. I think we were all very surprised. And we've got a few weeks until Speaker Boehner steps down on October 29th to come up with another speaker. Now, remember, Speaker Boehner said he's not going to leave if there is not a new speaker in place. So we've got some time to come together as a conference and find that right person.
Congressman Walters, just ask your colleague, Congressman Mulvaney, if he was comfortable, and the Freedom Caucus would be comfortable with John Boehner negotiating on behalf of the House Republicans on the debt ceiling and on the budget. Are you comfortable with that if it comes to that?
I'm comfortable with Speaker Boehner. I think Speaker Boehner has done a tremendous amount for this country. I'm very supportive of him, and if he needs to stay in place until we find a new speaker, I am 100% behind him.
Congressman King, Donnie Deutsch, you're my new favorite person on the planet. What exactly,
oh my God.
What exactly did you mean by saying Joe seems like a guy who walked out of a revival tent barefoot? Can we just extrapolate that a little bit? Because there's a lot of meat on that bone.
You know, Joe and I made our peace many years ago when Joe realized that he was right, that he was wrong and I was right.
No, you had it right the first time when I was right.
Actually, it was a whole thing. There was a sort of Southerners versus New York, and I just went to the Donald Trump style of the ad hominem attack.
Yeah, he did.
I thought it was very well said, by the way.
I know you like
Thank
that.
you.
Yes, Richard Haas.
I have actually a question for Mimi Walters. Mimi, whether you think all of this, or how will it affect the vote on the debt ceiling? Whether you think Republicans at the end of the day, with or without this or that person as speaker, are prepared to line up and take what is a significant vote?
This is going to be a very significant vote, and I think at the end of the day, we are faced with a huge challenge. If we have to raise the debt ceiling, we're going to need reforms. We're going to be facing this vote at the end of this month, or well, at least by November 5th, and we've got a big vote ahead of us.
Is that a yes?
Yes, yes.
Jonathan Gayford.
This is a question for Congressman King. Congressman, you said yesterday, quote, "We have to end this. We look absolutely crazy." meaning about the House Republican caucus. How does this ultimately end, and when does it end?
Jonathan, first, let me tell you, the only person who wears a tie knot like that is my son. And I always kid him for it. Have the size of that's like the size of a softball.
Come on, Congress, I just asked you a serious question.
Yeah. So, but no, seriously, how does it end? We have to get behind the speaker. We have to get someone who's going to represent all wings of the party, but is not going to tolerate people just going off on their own and threatening to shut down the government if they don't get everything they want. And we just can't allow any faction to do that, whether it's from New York or whether it's from Mississippi or the Panhandle. You just can't do it. You have to. We are a two-party system, and that's what I'm concerned about. That we're breaking off into these factions. Just the fact that we're talking so much about the Freedom Caucus. They may be 15% of the Republican Party, about 8% of the House of Representatives. You can't allow one group to have that type of power, no matter where they're from.
All right, Congressman Peter King, you know I love you. Always have, even though you're squished. Word then, are now. Mimi Walters,
hey, Joe, go back in that hillbilly tent, will you?
Exactly. There you go. All right.
Johnny,
Mimi
does he have
Walters.
socks on yet? Is he wearing socks yet?
No.
No, I don't wear socks.
He's got flat front chinos on, though. That's, that's what the kids wear
Dress him up, will you?
You know, the reason why, of course, Peter King has to wear socks is because the polyester really does scratch.
Oh.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter.